The grand opening of my brother's bar was supposed to be the night our family finally stopped asking me for money. 37 missed calls before sunrise told me it was the opposite, but I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand what happened at 2 in the morning on a Friday in October, you need to understand what the previous 2 years looked like from my apartment in Denver, Colorado, sitting alone at my kitchen table with a spreadsheet open and a sinking feeling in my stomach that never quite went away. My brother Tyler had always been the one our parents pointed to when they wanted to talk about potential. He was charming in the way that certain people are charming, the kind that works beautifully in a room full of strangers and falls apart under any real scrutiny. He could talk to anyone. He remembered birthdays and told jokes that actually landed. He had our father's laugh and our mother's eyes and neither of their financial sense. Growing up, I was the one who read the fine print. Tyler was the one who never thought there was fine print to read. I am 29 years old. I work as a licensed CPA at a mid-size accounting firm. I own my apartment outright, bought it at 26 with money I had been quietly saving since my first job at 17. I drive a car that is 11 years old and has never given me a single problem because I maintain it on schedule and I don't ignore warning lights. I am, by every measurable definition, boring. I have been told this many times, mostly by my mother, usually right before she asks me for something. For 2 years, that something had been Tyler's bar. He had conceived of it the way Tyler conceived of everything all at once, fully formed, entirely dependent on other people's resources. A craft cocktail bar in Austin, Texas. He had already picked out a name. He had already sketched the logo on a bar napkin and photographed it and sent it to the family group chat with 4 exclamation points. What he did not have was capital, a business plan, a liquor license, a location, or any experience running a food and beverage operation of any kind. He had tended bar for 3 years in college, which he seemed to believe was equivalent. My parents were delirious with excitement. My mother texted me a photograph of the napkin sketch at 7 in the morning. "Tyler is going to do it," she wrote. "He is really going to do it this time." I stared at that message for a long time. This time, as if the pressure washing business that never bought equipment, the food truck that never bought a truck, and the online clothing resale venture that ended with a storage unit full of unsold inventory were all simply rehearsals for this moment. I called my mother that evening. I told her I was happy for Tyler. I told her I genuinely hoped it worked out. And then I told her clearly, without anger, that I would not be contributing financially to this venture. I had my own financial goals. I had already loaned Tyler money twice and seen none of it returned. This was my line, and I was holding it. My mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, in the voice she used when she wanted me to feel small, that I had always been the practical one. She said it the way other people say selfish. Over the following months, I watched from a careful distance as the bar took shape. My parents liquidated a chunk of their retirement savings. They maxed out 2 credit cards. They drove down to Austin 3 times and stayed in hotels. I quietly calculated cost more than a flight would have. Tyler's girlfriend, a woman named Bree, who I had met exactly once at Christmas and who laughed too loudly at things that were not funny, became the de facto interior designer. There were Instagram posts about exposed brick and reclaimed wood, and a custom neon sign that Tyler told my mother cost $4,000. I did not comment on any of it. I watched it from behind the glass of my phone screen, the way you watch a car slide slowly toward a guardrail and understand that there is nothing you can do from where you are standing. The grand opening was scheduled for the 2nd Saturday of October. The invitation went out to the entire family group chat. My parents, my aunt and uncle, 3 cousins, and Tyler's entire social circle. My mother sent me a separate text to make sure I had seen it. "We would love for you to be there," she wrote. "It would mean the world to Tyler," I replied honestly. "I have a work deadline that weekend. I am proud of him." "Tell him," I said, "congratulations." My mother did not respond to that message for 4 days. When she did, it was a thumbs up emoji, which in our family's language meant she was storing the grievance for later. The opening was on a Saturday. I was in Denver, finishing a cost analysis for a client merger that was due Monday morning. I was in my home office at 11 at night, working through a second cup of coffee, when my phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. It was a photograph of a full bar, warm light, people laughing, glasses raised, a good crowd. He looked genuinely happy in the photo, standing behind the bar in a black apron with that ridiculous logo on the chest. I smiled at my screen. Good for him, I thought. I meant it. I plugged in my phone, shut my laptop at midnight, and went to sleep. I woke up at 2:43 in the morning to a sound that my brain initially processed as an alarm. It was not an alarm. It was my phone, vibrating continuously against my nightstand, notification after notification, arriving in such rapid succession that the individual buzzes had collapsed into a single sustained hum. I grabbed it before I was fully conscious. The lock screen was a wall. 37 missed calls. 22 text messages. 4 voicemails. The breakdown made my stomach drop. My mother, 11 calls. My father, 9 calls. Tyler, 8 calls. My Aunt Linda, 4 calls. 2 cousins I hadn't spoken to in months. A number I didn't recognize with a 512 area code Austin. The texts were worse. They were fragmented, panicked, none of them complete sentences. Call us back right now. Emergency. Rachel, answer your phone. Something happened at the bar, call mom. Rachel, dad needs you. Tyler is asking for you, please pick up. Where are you? Answer. I sat up in the dark with my heart going too fast and pressed call on my mother's number. She picked up before I heard a ring. Rachel. Her voice was strange. Not crying, but close to something worse, a kind of flat, controlled panic that I had only ever heard once before, the night my grandfather had a stroke. Mom, what happened? Is someone hurt? No one is physically hurt. She paused. There are some issues with the bar. What kind of issues? Money issues. Another pause. The opening did not go the way we expected. Tyler needs your help. I was already standing, turning on my bedside lamp, squinting in the light. Mom, it's almost 3 in the morning. Can you tell me specifically what is happening? Your father should explain it. Hold on. There was shuffling, the sound of voices in the background, and then my father's voice came on the line. He sounded exhausted in a way that was different from being tired. He sounded like someone who had been holding something very heavy for a long time and could no longer hold it. Rachel. He cleared his throat. First of all, the opening went well. A good crowd. Tyler did a great job. Dad. It's 3 in the morning and I have 37 missed calls. Please skip to the part that explains that. He exhaled. The payment system went down tonight. Their card reader, the whole system crashed during peak hours. They lost probably 4 hours of revenue, and Tyler had taken out a cash advance to cover some last-minute supply orders, and between that and the equipment deposit he paid last week, the operating account is short. He can't make payroll for his staff tomorrow morning. I pinched the bridge of my nose. How short? $11,000. The number landed in my chest like something physical. I breathed through it. Dad, I told you both very clearly when this started that I wasn't going to be the financial backstop for this business. I told you that when Tyler was planning it. I said it again when he was building out the space. I said it a third time when Mom asked me to just help with the liquor license fee. My answer has not changed. Rachel. His voice had shifted slightly, hardened at the edges. This is your brother. He has 11 employees who need to be paid tomorrow. Real people with rent and families. Then Tyler needs to call his bank and request an emergency line of credit, or he needs to find an investor, or he needs to call his employees and explain the situation honestly and ask for 2 days. Those are real solutions. I am not a solution. I am his sister. There was silence on the line. Long enough that I checked to make sure the call was still connected. Then my father said, quietly, "Just call your bank, Rachel. You have the savings. Authorize a wire." Something in the way he said it caught in my mind like a splinter. Just call your bank. Not just transfer the money. Just call your bank. Authorize a wire. Dad. I kept my voice even. Why are you telling me to call my bank? Why wouldn't I just do a transfer from my app? Silence. Dad. It would be faster as a wire. He was talking too quickly. For the amount, a wire clears same day. Your app transfer might take. My transfers are instant. I have it set up. I've done it 100 times. More silence. I walked to my home office and opened my laptop. I had a habit I had built over years of financial discipline. Monthly reviews of every account, every inquiry, every line. I hadn't done October's review yet. It was on my calendar for next weekend. I pulled up my credit monitoring portal. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself my father was just stressed and not thinking clearly, and the specific phrasing didn't mean anything. I told myself that even as my fingers typed in the password, even as the dashboard loaded, even as my eyes went immediately and involuntarily to the red banner at the top of the screen that was not there the last time I logged in. Alert. Hard inquiry recorded. Date. September 19th. Creditor. Lone Star Commercial Lending, LLC. Type. Commercial cosigner application. Status. Approved. Associated account balance. $340,000. The room felt like it tilted. I clicked on the inquiry. My hands were steady. I have always been steadiest when things are worst. It is not a virtue, it is just how I am built. The associated documents loaded. A commercial lease agreement for a property on East 6th Street in Austin, Texas. 3-year term. Monthly rent, $4,200. Co-signer of record, Rachel M. Calloway. Date of signature, September 19th. I had been in Denver on September 19th. I had a dentist appointment in the morning and a client call in the afternoon. I had not been in Austin. I had never been to that bar. I had never seen that lease. My signature was at the bottom of the document. It was close. It was a decent forgery, someone who had seen my signature enough times to reproduce the general shape of it. But the capital R looped wrong, and there was a slight tremor in the L that I did not have. I had signed my name approximately 40,000 times in my professional life. I knew exactly what it looked like. I stared at my name on that lease for a long time. Long enough that my father's voice coming through the phone speaker, Rachel? Are you still there? Rachel, we just need you to call the bank and authorize. Began to sound very far away, like something heard through water. I picked up the phone. Dad? I said. Who is the cosigner on Tyler's commercial lease? Dead silence. Dad. I heard him exhale. I heard my mother's voice somewhere near him, urgent and low, and I couldn't make out the words, but I understood the tone. It was the tone of people who have been caught and are deciding how to handle it. Then my mother took the phone. Rachel. Her voice was different now. Not the flat panic from before. This was something practiced. Something she had clearly been preparing. Before you say anything, I need you to understand that we did not have a choice. Tyler's credit is not in a good place right now. And your father and I, after everything with the retirement account, we couldn't qualify as co-signers either. You have an excellent credit score. You have a stable income. You never would have agreed if we had asked. So you forged my signature on a $340,000 commercial lease. We signed it for you. We did it to help your brother. You committed felony fraud. I said it the way I would say any other fact. The sky is blue. This is tax season. You committed felony fraud. You used my personal information, my social security number, my financial history, to bind me to a $340,000 liability that I knew nothing about. That is identity theft. That is forgery. Those are federal crimes. Rachel, don't be dramatic. Her voice had taken on a brittle quality. It's a co-signature. You're not actually paying anything. Tyler pays the rent. You're just the backup. I am the legal guarantor of a lease on a bar that has just lost 4 hours of revenue on its opening night and cannot make payroll on day 1. Mom, I am an accountant. Do you understand what you're saying to me right now? We are family. Her voice cracked on the last word. We did it for the family. Tyler has been working toward this for 2 years. He needed this chance. You have so much, Rachel. You have your apartment and your job and your savings, and you've never once... Stop. I said it quietly, but she stopped. I need you to listen to me very carefully. Is Dad there? Yes. Both of you listen. Do not say anything else to me about the bar or the lease or Tyler. I need to make some calls. I will call you back. Rachel. Wait. I hung up. I sat in my office chair for approximately 30 seconds, staring at my laptop screen, at the red banner, at the neat rows of data that represented the quiet demolition of something I had spent 11 years building. Then I opened a new tab and looked up the non-emergency number for the Austin Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. I looked up the contact number for the Federal Trade Commission's Identity Theft Hotline. I looked up my bank's fraud department line, which I had never needed before, and had saved in my phone 2 years ago in the way that you save emergency numbers, hoping you'll never use them, understanding that the day you do, you'll be glad you have them. I also looked up the number for the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Texas, because a commercial lease is not a credit card application. $340,000 across 3 years. A forged co-signature obtained using my social security number and financial records. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a family cutting corners. This was a federal matter, and I had 12 years of professional experience reading legal and financial documents, and I was not going to pretend otherwise to make anyone feel better. I called the fraud department first. It was a 24-hour line. The representative who answered was professional and patient, and I explained the situation clearly. Unauthorized use of my personal information to obtain a commercial cosigner status, forged signature on a legally binding lease, inquiry dated September 19th that I had not authorized. She flagged the account, opened a formal fraud investigation file, issued a temporary freeze on all outgoing transfers, and escalated the case to the commercial fraud team, which would contact me within 24 hours. Then I locked my credit at all 3 bureaus: TransUnion, Equifax, Experian. I had them frozen within 18 minutes. No new accounts could be opened, no new inquiries processed. Whatever else my family had planned, and I did not know yet whether there was more, they would hit a wall. Then I sat back in my chair and breathed. My phone was vibrating periodically with texts. I watched them arrive without opening them. My mother, my father, Tyler, my Aunt Linda, who I could only assume had been briefed at some point during the evening and recruited to apply pressure. There was a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I would later learn it was Bree, Tyler's girlfriend, calling to explain that the bar's situation was not Tyler's fault, and that I needed to understand how hard he had worked. I made myself a cup of tea. I am not a tea person. I drink coffee, but there was something about the deliberateness of it that I needed. Boiling the water, waiting, holding the mug with both hands. Then I called my father back. He answered immediately. "Rachel, thank God. Look, before you say anything, I've already filed a fraud report with my bank," I said. "My credit is frozen at all 3 bureaus. The bank is investigating the unauthorized cosigner application. I wanted to call you before I contact the Austin PD's Financial Crimes Unit because I thought you deserved to know what's coming." My father was silent for so long that I thought he had put the phone down. "Rachel." When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "You can't do this to your brother. He'll lose the bar. He'll lose everything. Tyler's lease situation is Tyler's problem. The fraud is my problem. Those are 2 separate things. The lease is in your name. If you report it as fraud, the landlord can terminate the lease immediately. Tyler will be evicted. He has employees, Rachel. He has people depending on him. The lease is in my name because you forged my signature. That's not a reason for me not to report it. That's the reason I have to. We'll pay it back." My mother's voice now. She had taken the phone again. "Every cent. We'll sell the house if we have to. Will. You refinanced the house twice. I've seen the statements you sent me when you needed help with a payment. There is no equity left to sell. Then we will find a way. Rachel, please. Tyler is standing right here. He didn't know. We didn't tell him how we secured the lease. He didn't know any of this." I thought about that for a moment. I thought about my brother standing in a bar he had built, wearing an apron with a logo he had drawn on a napkin, surrounded by people who had come to see him succeed. I thought about whether it mattered, in a legal sense, that he hadn't known. I thought about the 11 employees who were, in fact, real people who had taken jobs and would need their paychecks. And then I thought about September 19th, when someone had sat down at a computer with my social security number and signed my name to a document that committed me to 3 years of financial liability for a business I had explicitly, repeatedly, stated I would not financially support. Someone had done that with full knowledge of what they were doing. They had done it because they believed I wouldn't find out, or because they believed that if I did find out, my love for my family would override my love for myself. They had miscalculated on both counts. "I'm not going to call the Austin police tonight," I said. I'm going to sleep. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to speak with my attorney, and I'm going to follow whatever she advises. I would strongly suggest that you speak with an attorney as well. What happens after that is not in my control. Rachel, you are destroying this family. The family was destroyed tonight. I didn't do that. I paused. Get some sleep, Mom. I hung up. I didn't sleep well, but I slept. That surprised me a little. I had expected to lie awake going over it. But there was something about having made the calls, having taken the steps, that quieted the part of my brain that had been running anxious calculations for 2 years about how this family dynamic was going to resolve itself. It had resolved, not the way I would have chosen. But it was done. In the morning, I called my attorney, a woman I had retained 3 years ago to handle my apartment purchase and with whom I had maintained a good professional relationship. I sent her the documents before our call so she could review them while we spoke. She was quiet for a long time after I finished explaining. Then she said, Rachel, I need you to understand the seriousness of what you're describing. A forged signature on a commercial lease of this value, combined with the unauthorized use of your social security number to obtain a cosigner status, this isn't a civil matter. This is criminal. I know. Whoever did this was your parent. I know that too. Do you want to press forward? I looked out my window. October in Denver, the mountains in the distance. Thin cloud cover, the particular quality of light that happens in fall when the air gets clean and cold and everything looks slightly more real than it did in summer. Yes, I said. The following weeks were not simple. Nothing involving attorneys and fraud investigations and family members is ever simple. My parents retained a lawyer in Austin. There were phone calls between attorneys that I was not present for. Tyler, when he eventually learned the full picture, my credit used, my signature forged, his cosigner, a person who had never agreed to be one, went quiet in a way I had not expected. He did not call to apologize. He did not call at all, for nearly 2 weeks. When he finally did, he left a voicemail that I still have. He said he was sorry. He said he hadn't known. He said he understood why I did what I did. He sounded like someone who had just learned something about his parents that had changed the shape of his whole childhood in retrospect and was still trying to find his footing on the new ground. I did not call him back. Not because I was punishing him, but because I did not have the emotional capacity to manage his processing of this situation on top of my own. Maybe later? Maybe not. I didn't know yet. My parents called every day for the first week, then every other day, then once a week. I did not answer. My Aunt Linda sent me a long email explaining that I had torn the family apart, that my parents were devastated, that Tyler might lose the bar, and that I needed to think about what kind of person I wanted to be. I read the email once, filed it, and did not respond. The fraud investigation concluded 6 weeks after I filed the initial report. My cosigner status on the lease was nullified. The landlord, informed that the signature had been forged, had the right to terminate the lease but chose instead to negotiate directly with Tyler for a new agreement, this time without a cosigner, at a higher monthly rate. Tyler kept the bar. I don't know how he made that work. I didn't ask. My parents faced civil liability for the fraud, damages primarily the cost of the investigation and legal fees. They did not face criminal charges, which was a decision my attorney advised me to accept given the costs and timeline of criminal prosecution and the reality that my parents are in their early 60s with no prior record. That outcome didn't feel like justice exactly, but it felt like what was survivable. I locked my credit for 6 months. I changed every password associated with any financial account. I set up alerts on every account. Any transaction above $50 triggers a notification to my phone within seconds. These are not dramatic measures. They are the measures you take when you have learned that the people who should have been your safest relationship were the ones you most needed protection from. I want to say something to anyone watching this who recognizes even a part of this story. Not the Italian villa or the forged lease specifically, but the feeling of being the responsible one. The one who is called in the night. The one whose credit score is good because you built it carefully, and who finds out that someone else saw that credit score as a resource they were entitled to use. You are not a resource. You are a person. And the difference between those two things is not something you owe anyone an explanation for. I still live in my apartment in Denver. I still drive my 11-year-old car. I still make coffee in the morning and sit at my kitchen table with my spreadsheets, which, whatever my sister-in-law Bree thinks about it, have bought me a life I am entirely in control of. The family group chat still exists. I am no longer in it. There is a freedom in that which I did not expect and cannot fully explain. Not happiness. Exactly not at first. More like the absence of a sound you had lived with so long, you stopped noticing it was there. The low-frequency hum of waiting for the next call, the next ask, the next emergency that was somehow always your responsibility to resolve. The silence that replaced it was the most expensive thing I ever purchased. I bought it with 11 years of careful living, one boundary that I held, and a fraud report filed at 3 o'clock in the morning in a quiet apartment in Colorado, while someone somewhere in Austin waited for me to be who I had always been. I was done being that. I made my coffee, I sat in the morning light, and for the first time in as long as I can remember, the only name on anything that mattered, my lease, my accounts, my future, was mine.